Hey everybody, today this room is filled with strangers, one at a time, and it's the most beautiful feeling in the whole world because every single stranger that comes in has their own story. And it's so beautiful for me when I can take the time to listen to their story, not to see them for the beautiful person that they look like, but to actually to see who they really are, to see them for not how pretty they are, how wealthy they are, what they do, what their profession is, but for who they really are, what they feel, what they think, what scares them, what makes them nervous, what excites them, what they're hopeful about. Those are the types of things that go on in this room. So you'll find in most of these conversations, we're not talking about people's jobs and their professions, and no one's selling anybody anything here. This is an opportunity just to get to know people with the hope that the way we see each other is so beautifully important to the world that we choose to live in. And for me, April was a stranger, and is a stranger. I still don't know anything about her. But I have a sense that when we leave this room, we won't be strangers anymore. We'll be friends. So the book is inspired. The show is sponsored by the Mosaic, the book over my shoulder. And you can pick it up at Amazon. You can do anything. You can read the story. It's a story about how by changing perspective, everything in life changes. So she told me that she didn't want to have this on. Okay. So everything in life changes when we change our perspective. And so the beauty of this whole situation is how do we see people differently than we've normally seen them before? And that's the story of the Mosaic in a shorter version. So without further ado, because it's sounding a little bit like a monologue, I am going to introduce and bring onto the show April Bielefeldt. And I hope I got it close.
Yeah, you got it close. That's
Okay.
wonderful.
April, welcome to the show. Tell us how to say your name. Tell us who you are, and tell us what's important to you.
Sure. My name is April Bielefeldt, and thank you for having me because I often feel like I'm busy being the cheerleader for other people. I get passionate about other people and their projects and their energy. So I'm like, rah-rahing, the musician husband and some of the other people. I'm so passionate about their message. And so it's hard sometimes when people say, well, what do you do? And sometimes I love to travel. I love to see the world. I love to meet new people and have experiences. And I'm definitely more like this one-on-one. I'm more comfortable. I don't like to get in front of big groups. I have a little bit of a shyness, in fact, when my husband does do concerts and performs on stage. My favorite place is to be kind of backstage on the side. And if I get lucky and get to photograph it, I have to like be in a place and then kind of just, like forget there's all these other people right there. I don't know. I've always kind of been a little bit people shy in a way, I guess. I
Oh,
don't know if that's my German background. The Bielefeld is a German name, and so a lot of my relatives were always, be quiet. You don't, they didn't talk a lot. They didn't converse. And to this day, even my sister, she's not a very conversationalist type person. And so if the phone rings and it's her, sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, it's either going to be really, really amazing news or it could be something really, extreme like that. It's not just
wow,
to have a conversation.
wow. So there's so much in there already that just from asking a person, and I want the listener to be engaged in this, by just holding the space for a person to tell us who they are, how they are, what they do, how many places we could take this conversation. And so I want to thank you for just sharing that part of you and being open and vulnerable and doing that in this place. Should we know your husband? Is he part of some group or is part of
Yeah,
a
his
music?
name is Jeffrey Bryan, and he's the current keyboard player for the band Survivor, who did
Oh
the
wow.
song "Eye of the Tiger." But and the weird thing for him is his life has kind of come full circle because 30 years ago he was in the movie Karate Kid, and Survivor was the band that just happened to have the trailer song, and he didn't, he wasn't like a fan. I mean, you're a fan of music, you're a fan of music, but it wasn't a band he like was like aspiring to be a part of. And he just randomly 30 years later gets an email like, hey, do you want to join this band? So
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
funny how life does that sometimes, just out of
Yeah.
nowhere,
Yeah.
circles back.
Um, and I would love to have him on the show if he wants to, but I don't want to spend this show talking about him. I just wanted
Yeah.
to give credit because you mentioned it, and so definitely check uh, uh, April and her husband out. His name is Jeffrey Bryan.
Yeah, Jeffrey Bryan.
Jeffrey Bryan. So check them out online. Um, what's important to you?
I think what's important is, being around people, as I mentioned, and encouraging them. That's kind of how I've always, uh, something runs through my mind often, that my mother used to say when, even before I like started dating, she's like, someday you're going to be someone's going to be lucky. You're such a cheerleader for people. And it's kind of stuck with me because I never see myself like, I never put myself in the category of like, oh, I'm an amazing photographer or I'm an amazing, I never wanted to take on a managerial role at work. I mean, we have all had to do jobs to pay our bills and put the roof over our house. And now I feel fortunate that I want to surround myself and like take people to see places. That's kind of with the photography tours. I like to take people and encourage that creativity, not tell them how to take a picture necessarily. You can learn how to do the technical stuff, but my thing is just to encourage and
I love
show
that.
them, and hopefully through that, and that sometimes can be good and bad because some people want somebody that's like an expert and tells them what button to push and all of that. And I'm like, I see everyone as a creative, whether that's through music or writing or whatever it is. I just feel like everyone's got a gift, and you may not see it from the outside, or they may blatantly wear it, but there's people that are out there kind of in the sidelines, like I am. Like I said, I often see myself kind of on the side encouraging those, but those people that are at the top, whether it's a president, a manager of a company, they need so many other people to kind of be their little squad to help make
Yeah.
all that happen. So,
Well, and there are so many people that are listening that play support roles in the world and that are good at what they do, but they also support others in what they do. And I just want to highlight how important that is
well, thank
because when
you.
somebody feels supported, they feel. I remember when I first met my wife, and she told me how much she loved me. I was at the lowest point in my life. My wife had passed away. My first wife had passed away, and I was raising a developmentally delayed child on my own. And I had gone through money. I had lost money. I had made some deals that didn't work. And it wasn't at the high point of my life that she found me. It was the low point of my life. And when she
Wow.
just told me that she loved me, I felt invincible because I thought, why in the world would you love me? And she said, I've never needed a reason to love somebody before. I just love you because I love you. And there's something so powerful about that place that I, I, I just sensed, and I'm lobbing this over in the net for you to tell me if I'm right or not, and for not because I want to be right or wrong, just because I wanted to get a sense from it, that sometimes we feel a little bit like that role isn't as important as the people that are doing the roles that people give credit to and are in front of the camera and all that stuff. And I just want to say that I thought I heard a little bit of that when you first started speaking. And,
Yeah.
and I want to just like acknowledge you for being you and how important that is and how I bet your husband couldn't make it without you.
Well, thank
Be,
you.
because that place is, we're in front of the public eye so much that we get praise and we get chopped down too.
Right,
And when we
right.
get chopped down, the people that are there to support us are just like immeasurably valuable to us. And so, did I sense some sense that there was like a second fiddle there?
Yeah, oh, I think sometimes, and I think that when that happens is when people, that you haven't met, and a lot of it I think is that getting back to how I think these conversations you're doing, I love it. I love the fact
Thank
of
you.
focusing on people and just a one-on-one conversation, because I think there's a technique to it. I know I found myself, like I say, I go to these concerts. I have I because of what he does, I'm often confronted with meeting a lot of people and, oh, here's so and so. And sometimes the first thing they say to me is, oh, so you're, you're so and so's wife, and what do you do? They want, they
Yeah.
want to know, oh, you're
Right.
you're his wife, so okay, we got that down. What do you do? So like, how do you make your money? And so sometimes you feel like, and do you have kids? It's like all this bombardment of things that
Right.
sometimes I feel like, well, I don't really have like a no, like a normal like
Yeah.
job is how
Yeah.
I would put it. I'm not making six figures or anything, and I don't have kids. And so you immediately, I think you start to feel like, down the totem pole instead of like, well, wow, I really, I'm doing X, Y, or Z. I think there's a lot more to a person just, as we've started to converse, more than maybe the job that pays your bills, or how many kids, or any of that.
Yeah.
It's there's so much more to that. So
It's so interesting. My wife and I'm the sun. I walk into a room and I just light up, and people light up because I just have
yeah.
that sort of energy. And my wife has that potential too, but she's really more the moon. She shines light when it's the most dark.
Oh,
And that's the most beautiful thing for a person who's always shining light and is the sun, to see somebody who's happy to be the moon, who's happy to take the sun's light and reflect it in the times when it's darkest for people. The sun
that's a
doesn't.
beautiful way of saying that. That's
Yeah.
really,
Well,
yeah.
we worked it through because otherwise it can become uncomfortable. There can be competition. There can be like, I want to be like you. I want to do that. But there's so much beauty in being the moon, and beauty in being the sun.
Yeah,
What?
I think I can really relate to that in a way. Yeah,
Yeah, I
because
thought
I'm
you might.
perfectly happy. Sometimes people say like, do you sing or play an instrument? And it's like, no, I'm perfectly fine. I'm very happy. Like, and sometimes that's why it's hard to explain people that if you're an introvert, you don't want to be out there with the crowd. You want to be as close as you can to the person you're supporting.
Yeah,
To me, I feel like it's giving them energy. Like if I'm just right back off stage in the wings, so to speak, I can feel like I can focus all my positive energy on what he needs to do for that night, for him to, I know how important it is for him to shine. And it gives me joy. It's actually, that does give me joy. And it's like, I don't need to socialize over here, and in fact, that's kind of like distracting. And sometimes people don't understand introverts that, or like,
absolutely.
that it like kind of frightens them to like to have to make small talk, so to speak, with, in that situation. That's
Yeah.
not, that's not my role there that night. So it's,
Again, I want to invite the listeners in, and I want you to hear how beautifully real April's being with us, and how rare her perspective is shown today in the world, and how beautiful it is to actually be there to support somebody, to be there to help, to love when somebody else shines, is so beautiful today. I mean, in a world where everybody's trying to be seen and heard and push their way to the top, to have someone who says, "Hey, you know what? I bet you're a darn good photographer, by the way,
oh, well, thanks.
and I bet you could have taken that and grown that into the business, and probably have grown that into a business." And yet, the place, and this may sound sexist. I hope to God it doesn't.
No, I don't think so.
There is a beautifulness to a relationship where the masculine is the masculine and the feminine is the feminine, and it doesn't mean it. Well, it sort of does mean that a male is masculine and a female is feminine. As when I look sometimes into the world today, I see strong women who become masculine rather than strong women who stay feminine. And it doesn't
Right,
mean they have to just support or do that. But there's something in the feminine nature that just naturally supports. It just, men aren't like that. I mean, we're supportive. We can try, but it's a try for us. Women just
right.
have that ability to just give and support and be there. And maybe that's what the feminist movement or Me Too is all about, that we don't want to do that, but I hope not, because I hope that all of us have in ourselves a masculine and feminine nature, and we grow those both those sides of us. If that makes sense, I don't know if
No,
I'm
no,
describing
it
it.
does. No, I very much agree with you that somewhere down in our DNA and our, very soul of us. Yeah, one, and that makes a good relationship actually as
Yes.
well. It's
Yeah.
very strong. You can be, in some ways, my husband and I are just so different, and some people might be like, well, how do you make that work? Or, I've had family members that are like, I don't see how you do it, but after X number of years, they're like, well, you must be doing something right. And I think it's that balance you have to, of, but like you said, women just naturally, they want to nurture, they want to support for the
Yeah.
most part. I can speak only for me as that female, but I find that characteristic coming out, whether like you, if I met you and I feel passionate about what you're doing, I just want to, or if it's a friend, a woman friend, I'll put them out there more than myself. It just gives
Yeah.
me great joy. And I think that's confusing sometimes to people, or they don't know how to process that.
So can I go a little deeper with you? And if,
Yeah,
again, if I ask you something you don't want to answer, just don't answer it, okay?
sure.
Um, is there any part of you that does that because you don't want to stand up and be seen?
I don't think so. I honestly, sometimes I can pull it out where I do want to be seen. Like I do
Yeah.
want to, if I'm given the correct environment, the correct challenge, I do take great joy if, there's been Survivor is a good example. They called my husband up and they were to go to the first rehearsal. And since it was a new lineup, I think it was I don't know, one of the people in the team as such said, "Oh, I see your wife's a photographer. Do you think she would mind taking the band photo for, you know, whatever?" And my husband just about fell off the floor, fell off the phone like, yeah, like sure. And
Right.
so I was very nervous, but I just gathered all my strength together and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm scared to death. I probably don't have all the technical skill, but I pulled it together and I did it, and it gave me such joy to like do that and feel pride. I love showing off that picture now,
Of
or
course. Of course. So what is it about people, or you more specifically, that doesn't think they have the skills when they actually do?
that's a really interesting question. I don't, honestly, I don't. I think it's because the skills that I have, that I probably do have innately, as far as like bringing out creativity in people or encouraging, like if I'm traveling with other women and they've just got a little cell phone and they see that, they're like, well, April, you've got that beautiful wall hanger image of New England. How do I get that? And I'm like, let's get up early, let's just get out. I try to create that environment, but I can't tell you technically what you need to do. And maybe that's because I want them to find that within themselves. I want to get them there a different way. And society, I think, rewards, there's a lot of that nuts and bolts maybe of, science and math, which are all very important. But maybe that's something too, that growing up, my family, there was a lot of nuts and bolts people. My
Yeah.
sister's a professor of engineering. So
Wow.
again, just we're
Wow.
completely, like
Right. Right.
so different. And I have these like soft skills. That's what I kind of call them, people skills. And I
Yeah.
didn't even know I had it either. I have to credit, going back to high school. I was thinking about this morning. I'm like, how did I even get comfortable like agreeing to do this? And I realized it probably goes back to, I was super shy in high school, loved art, but one day walking through the hall, a particular teacher who had, it was called DECA, Distributive Education Clubs of America. I didn't know anything about it. This teacher was standing in a doorway as classes were switching, and he like called my name or literally like grabbed me out of the hall, and he's like, April, I think you should join this DECA thing. I can get you a job at Yonkers, which in the Midwest was a premier, it was kind of like Macy's, like a premier,
Right.
department store. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like the image, I never saw myself that way. But then I was thinking, oh, I'm going to have to talk to people and have to sell them something. But it really forced me, to put myself into that role and go do it, to
Yeah.
learn how to converse with people one on one and just grow that. But it literally, like I said, to this day, if he hadn't pushed that, I might still just be like finding a job, where I could just be alone
Yeah.
behind the bookshelves somewhere.
So As you're talking, I have this feeling that's coming up because when I look at you, like look at you, you're a very attractive woman. Your hair is not a natural color. You know, you've made your hair into this, really chic sort of look.
Yeah.
You have these glasses that are, standoutish. You wear colors that are not invisible colors. I mean, I don't know if you do that, but today I'm just talking about today. You wouldn't think from looking at you on the screen that I see, you wouldn't think this is someone who stands behind the scenes. You would think this is someone that everybody notices.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it kind of does. I think it kind of does.
Piece those two people together for me if you can.
See that you know what? I don't know. I've always that's an interesting thought. I think it's like you put on, because I love orange as a color. I love. I
Yeah,
gravitate towards the orange. I don't know if it's the autumn. I love autumn. I love. I had growing up. I had red hair, not super bright, but I loved that. And I always like to be different. I didn't want to, which is interesting given what I've said about being quiet and being
yeah.
shy and reserved and. I'd rather be by the side of the stage. I don't want to be out front dancing with all the other band girls or whatever. I'd rather, yeah, I'd rather be behind the camera and that type of thing. I don't want to like take a group. I don't want to talk in front of an audience. It is an interesting. I don't know. It's hard to connect the two. It's like these two personalities, and somehow I sometimes wonder how I make them work together. To be
Do
honest.
you feel disconnected? The two personalities are disconnected, or do you feel somehow they are connected?
Um, I think they are somehow connected. I think I take strength in controlling, like, I can decide if I want to be bold today, or I guess I learned to accept the fact that I liked things a little differently maybe than the other kids, and that was okay. So I did have to be, I think anyone has to learn to be strong, but I wasn't going to just follow the pack. So
Yeah,
maybe in order to reinforce that, it's like, okay, if I'm going to wear these crazy glasses and clothes, I got to own it, but it's on my terms. Maybe, you know,
I
that,
can do it when I want, how I want, where I
yeah,
want.
that can be tricky though too. But
Yeah,
I think that's a part of, that introverts are interesting in that way, that they can be out front sometimes, but then they need a lot of, like, they need their downtime, they need their
yeah,
recharge time, you
yeah.
know.
I always would amaze people because people would think I was the most outgoing person in the world. And I would always say to them, I'm really, really shy. And they would say, come on, you're not shy. You're the first person to talk to somebody. But I think that I really am an introvert also, the way you're describing it, because I love my alone time. I mean, it's what I
Yes.
cherish. And I love being with people. Like, look, who does conversations with strangers? Who's an
Right.
introvert, right? You wouldn't think it. But there's a beautiful integration of when I have enough alone time to recharge and to sort of be with myself, then I can give all of myself when I'm with people. So it's fascinating. I bet there are people that are listening that are interested in that discussion.
Yeah. And I know there's a couple women that have, or I know one woman that's written a book on it, that she said too, people that you see, I don't know if she used it, it was a presidential person, and I don't, I'm throwing Clinton out there, I don't know why, but it
Right.
comes to mind, or maybe another one, where she said you would think that person is like, they're so gregarious, they can work a whole room, but you don't realize that really underneath they're an introvert. It's just
Yeah.
society is kind of, rewarded extrovertism, and so we've kind of, some of us introverts have learned how to do that, but then we need our downtime. I mean,
Yeah. I
going
love,
back to my past again, it's like after I would go do my shift at the department store, a lot of times when I would come back home, my mom would just be like, my parents would just know, like, okay, she needs her space. And there'd be Friday nights where it's like, I'd go to work, and then you'd have a date coming, and my mom would specifically just know, like, she's going to make that date wait in the living room for, because I needed that time to kind of
right. Recharge.
recharge and regroup before I could, like, give because again, I think it's that attention. We care so much, and maybe that's the core of it. We care so much about, we don't want to just haphazardly go into that next conversation. We want to, to be
Yeah.
full again, to give again.
So would you say, like, I'm putting pieces together as you're talking, because that introverted part of you that needs the time to themselves, but then cares so much about another person and wants to be their cheerleader, is do you find a lot of introverts that are as supportive as you are, or is it your particular gift?
You know what? That's interesting because I'm not, I know my sister who's got to be an introvert. I mean, like I said, she won't get on the phone. I've actually been the one to connect with some of her friends or
Right.
acquaintances. She's very comfortable like in, being home. She loves this being home thing. She teaches online now, but I mean, and she's an excellent professor, but and she does that role, but she's not someone that has like a lot of friends or social acquaintances. So she's even maybe more introverted. So maybe I'm kind of, you and I are kind of on the in the middle there, because I like I said, I think I'm so thankful to that teacher who pulled me out of the hall. I don't
Yeah.
know what may have become of me had I I
Totally.
might have been too into myself, because it did really, those skills of working in a retail store forced me to get out of my comfort zone and
Yeah. Yeah.
gain some confidence. And maybe that's part of it too, is to,
I have a stepson now with my wife who was that way. He was scared to walk to 3 blocks to a store and go in and ask a question. And when he turned 16, he got a job as a cashier.
oh,
And it blew his mind that he got the job. He went in, he didn't think he was going to get it. He got the job, and he was accepted. And I noticed the whole change because he had to interact with people. That he became more confident in himself. He became more, sort of interesting. Um, Let me change the thrust a little bit. Just
yeah.
I suck at lightning rounds, but we're going to play it anyway. Okay.
Okay.
I'm too curious normally. Are you a dog or a cat person?
Dogs, definitely dogs.
And coffee or tea?
Coffee, I've got my coffee right here and I drink it black. I love
Okay.
coffee.
I love black coffee. Um, would you say, not necessarily in the way you vote, but in the way you live your life, are you more conservative or more liberal?
That's a really challenging question. I have conservative, I think I have conservative views just on, it's hard for me to, I think sometimes our society gets like hung up on, men are just built different. So it doesn't, I don't know, sometimes when these stories, like when Clinton and Monica blew up, it's like, why are we putting all this this is crazy. So in that way you would think that, why, well, if I was more conservative, that should really bother me.
Yeah.
But on the, it doesn't. And I think just on the fact that the household I was raised in, there might be, people's outer, what maybe nature, God, whoever it is that's in charge of everything gave you a female body. But I personally know some people that, maybe really their DNA, they're more ticking like the male side. And so it doesn't, since I don't walk in those shoes, I can't explain why the, two women or two men have a beautiful relationship, but I don't question that. I don't,
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me. It doesn't, there shouldn't, to me, there shouldn't be a hang up as far as how that works, or, keeping, but there again, it's like, and there's so much going on in society right now that's just, it's hard for people. And but I do very much believe that we are, maybe it's not everybody's God, but I do believe in a spirit, an overwhelming, whether it's nature or something that kind of makes it. There's just been too many times in my life where things have happened, or even with my husband, I still don't know how to piece that. I'm still processing that some days.
Right.
Like, how
Right.
does this happen?
Right.
You've been working in the music industry forever and we still don't know one person that could have connected you. It's like it just fell out of the sky into an email one day. And so how does that happen?
I love that. I love that.
So I
Um,
think if anything, that's just, like I said, that's a tough one, but
yeah. Well, everything you described in my mind would be more liberal than conservative, but you defined yourself, I'm probably more conservative. So
yeah.
that it interests me. Um, have you always felt like you fit into the world, or have you always felt a little bit different?
I think I've always felt a little bit different.
Yeah.
Like I said, I grew up given my family, most of them were teachers, and I may have made a great teacher and very happy at it, but that's not a route even initially I took. I actually always wanted to be a fashion designer and go into
Oh,
fashion and do that. And then for some reason, and that's where my sister too, I think she always, I'm the older sister, even though a lot of people would think she's the older
yeah.
sister. um she always thought, oh, she's the fluffy one, she wants to work at the mall and wear these clothes and design fashion, so she must be just all fluff. And then I do this complete like turnaround where now it's like, I want to be basic. I love, you know taking people to see the trees. I love just like, let's just stand here and look at the sunrise together. Let's just feel autumn. I mean, that's why I have to go back to New England every
Right.
fall. There's this inside me where it's like, and I just want people to experience that.
Do you
So
take people on photography trips? Is that what you do?
yeah, I do. I take small groups. I keep them very small, probably about 5 to 6, because I like to travel in one vehicle.
Yeah.
So that way, if I see something, I'm kind of one of these things I try, and this is where I really try to listen to the gut. And as we get older, I think unfortunately, you have these restrictions like, well, I should stick with this job because it pays the bills, and instead of listening to the gut. And so thankfully now my husband and I are kind of in a place where I can pursue more, do your passion, do what it is that brings you joy.
I love that. I think what a beautiful thing to take a camera and just go out. And
Yeah.
when I was younger, when I was 18, I dropped out of school, out of college. I had done all my undergraduate degree, courses to get an undergraduate degree in psychology, and I decided that wasn't the answers I was looking for. So I put my thumb out on the road, and I had a bedroll. I just had a very little bit that I took with me, and I was very concerned about not having anything that anybody would think was valuable, so that it would get stolen from me.
Right.
So I didn't take a camera, but I took a pad of paper and some charcoal pencils. And I was not a very good drawer. Don't even think.
Don't ask for those
No,
pictures.
no, 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 they were terrible. But what I couldn't believe, and maybe it was because people just had mercy on me, but I would go and I would sit on a corner and I would just start to draw something, and people would suddenly start to sit around me,
Really? Oh, wow.
and they would bring me food and they would bring me things to drink, and I don't know what they thought. If they thought, who is this insane guy who was just sitting there? We need to take care of him. They would invite me to stay in their homes. I mean, it was such a beautiful, innocent world. And I
Yeah.
would always give them my things. I think they probably used them for fire kindling or whatever, because they weren't any good. But even somebody who's not good at something, when they're just sitting with their heart and doing it, draws a heartfelt crowd, which
Right.
is
Oh,
what I
that's
thought was really
amazing.
interesting.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And so I think for the work that you do with a camera, I think it's so valuable just to not know all the answers, not know how to do it, just discover it and start to shoot and just feel what you feel. And I love that you do that with
Oh,
people.
you encompass that beautifully, because that's what I try to tell people. I just, just bring whatever you have and like just come and, let it unfold. I'm going to take you to the places that hopefully inspire you and
Yeah,
get you there at the right time, but then just let it unfold. And sometimes that's the other thing is itineraries. Like, people will say, well, where are we going today? And it's like, I have a general idea, but sometimes it's like, I've literally gone down the road and, for some reason I'll just see, and people that now they continue to go with me, I think for that reason, they're like, you know what, for whatever reason, she just goes with her gut, and we end
right.
up seeing some amazing barn, or we meet the owner of the barn, like you said, that just comes out, they see us there enthralled with it, and then now they're opening the door and they're like, oh, come on in, meet the cows, and we want to make you dinner. And like you said, when you're open to that, it's so amazing to me. Sometimes it just brings tears to my eyes when that happens, because you think, how in this century with all the negativity going on,
Yeah.
People are going to trust just a quote stranger and invite them in and three other people they don't know.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I want the listener to get engaged here because I want to just ask you, when was the last time you did something that you were really not that good at or could be good at? It doesn't matter, good or bad, doesn't matter, but that you took a risk and just went out and allowed the world, the universe, the time frame, everything to be at play, and just allowed yourself to be vulnerable enough to be in the moment and capture the moment, whether that's through writing or through photography or through artistry or whatever it is. When was the last time you were allowed yourself to do that and allowed yourself to be taken care of by the world around you?
Um, that's interesting because we haven't been traveling for a bit
Right,
now.
6 months, nobody has been traveling.
Yeah. But I've been bravely trying to put try to put some of my thoughts and try to do something with putting it in words, which is a challenge to me.
Yeah,
Someone challenged me to start writing a book, like a guide, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of out of my realm. Words maybe not my best. Sometimes I get tripped up and just point and like, but probably that's most recently. I think that was like July. So I'm in the process of trying to write and collect these thoughts, but I'm looking forward to going in a week or so, go to Montana. I've never been there. It's the
well,
one place that appears to be open. Just go with one or two people that are willing. We're going to wear our masks and be safe and try to just, again, have that experience of, seeing something alongside the road, and hopefully the world opens up, and
I
who
love
knows
that.
who we'll meet, or what stories they'll share. And
The reason I'm doing this is because when I finished writing my book, The Mosaic, the book literally spoke to me and said, I want you to get out on the road and do what Mo did.
oh,
And,
really?
and I want you to go and speak to all the people that nobody speaks to and listen to the people that nobody listens to. And I made a date in the sand, May 1st, that I was going to go. And obviously COVID came and, put a waylay in that. Um, but I think there's something so beautiful to just getting away from the television and the media
Yes.
and seeing and interacting with nature and people and just seeing the way the world is. Because I before I was about to leave, I just put a note on Facebook, and 45 people said, "Please come and visit us. We'll put you up. We'll feed
Oh,
you."
really? Oh my
And so
gosh.
and now what's happened is through these conversations, I've talked to every continent on the planet, and
Wow.
and the people are just. What I realize is people are hungry for new experiences. They just want to meet people. They want to be heard and seen. Are you someone who, like you sort of hinted at it, that you support other people? But both of these are important. Do you feel like it's more important for you in this moment to have a voice and to be able to say what you feel? Or do you feel it's more important for you to be able to listen to voices of other people and support them in what they do? From what you said before, I would assume the second, but there's a feeling that I have that somehow there's something in you that you would like to say.
Yeah, somehow a little, I mean, part of like agreeing to be on and speak with you, I think is a little of that, like, again, of just encouraging people to be open, and that's why maybe the book hasn't really taken shape yet. I'm struggling a little bit with quote a traditional travel guide.
Yeah,
I'm trying to weave in some of my, like we've shared how I really, you got to learn to listen to your gut. You got to learn to like trust it. You have, yes, you need to be careful. I'm not saying young women should always just, hop in the next car that comes
right.
down the road or anything crazy. But I think when you listen to your gut, I I learned this early on, maybe being in the Midwest, maybe because, learning to take in the signs of nature, like the storm clouds are coming, and you got that gut feeling even at 3 or 4 or 5 if you're out playing with kids in the street, like, okay, time to go home. Or
Yeah,
I remember vividly a time when my mother gave my friend and I permission to take the bus across town to register for some classes. And leaving the schoolyard, I kind of assessed it and I saw across the field that we had to cross to get back to the bus stop, a man, a kid, I don't know, I couldn't tell, was a guy on a bicycle, and I couldn't tell what was happening, but it didn't look maybe so right.
Yeah.
Something was giving me like, the hairs on my arm, and I didn't want to scare my friend. So I looked at my friend and I said, "Hey, I'll race you to the bus stop. We gotta like book it to the," and we took off running. And as we ran by, I kind of vaguely remember, the person yelling or trying to get our attention. Got home that night. My mom comes home from her because she was working then, and the TV comes on, and there was something on the news about somebody that had been approaching kids, over by
Wow.
the school. And some people, when I tell the story, because I tell people that I didn't tell, I just, because my mom looked at me and she's like, "Wait, you were over there today, or, were you and so okay, you and Julie?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." I said, "I don't think I saw anyone. Julie and we ran and got to the bus." And I said, "Honestly, I didn't want to scare her.
Yeah.
I wanted to protect her. And I also didn't want her to take away be like, oh my gosh, I can't trust you out in the world."
Right. Right.
So it's just those experiences of, as we grow, we tend to put up roadblocks, like we're supposed to do this, we're supposed to do that. And I think that's how sometimes people do end up in jobs they're not always happy with. And I just
Yeah.
feel like a lot of times we got to rethink it. We got to like,
Totally. Totally. One of the things I loved about what you were hinting at, or saying, really not hinting, is how important it is for us to learn again to listen to our own instincts, to listen to nature. One of the reasons why I do this show is because I want to just be able to listen to people
right.
and allow people to speak, and for me to hear what they're saying. And I really want to create a revolution of listening, because I believe that um, a lot of our problems would be solved if we would only listen to each other rather than talk at each other. And so I love the idea that you're bringing in of just listening to the nature, listening to the clouds, listening to the instinct that we have when we're driving, but when we're seeing this person on the street. So I think I know the answer to the question I'm going to ask you. Do you believe the world in itself is talking to us? Do you believe that things talk to us? Do you believe our bodies talk to us? Do you believe that it's not just human beings that speak and we listen, but there are other things that we could listen to?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I definitely feel like there's something. It's like we've almost haven't, as a group of people, it's frustrating that we haven't learned. I mean, I grew up in the late 60s, so some of that early 60s history was taught
Right.
to me, and you heard about. I feel like it's 2020, and we're kind of unfortunately way back. And I was never raised to look at you and see just the, how do I say it? I mean, I was taught to like look at the soul, see through the eyes.
Yeah.
We're all
Yep.
people. I sometimes it's like what you see happening out there. It's like, how could you do that to another individual? How
Yeah.
can mothers, it still blows my mind. How can parents completely forget their child in the back seat? It just
Yeah.
breaks my heart. And so
Yeah.
I think the earth somehow is kind of scary, but I think there's messages.
What do you think it's saying?
I think it's saying we need to get back to basics. I think in a lot of ways we need to listen and care about each other. I think a lot of these, again, we've put these walls, these screens. We can, I fear for the kids that, just have a cell phone and they're interacting that way. They're not forced to like, you know, face to face. If you have to try to tell someone you don't like them, or, you have that immediate confrontation that you had as a kid, and you have to deal with that. But now it's like you can just antagonize someone with your words and be so hurtful, and maybe not understand where that other person is coming from. I think that's a lot of it. Um,
I want to encourage you to do your book. I was in publishing for 20 years. And so I want to encourage you to do your book. I think you have a lot to say.
oh, well, thank you.
And I think behind your desire to support others, you have a strong message. Um, and I think it comes through your photography. I think it comes through your ability to take people on trips. I think it comes through just a yearning inside of you that there is something really there for you to say. Just the fact that you showed up on this show,
Yeah.
right, means that there's something for you to say. And I'd like to give you 2 minutes right now to tell the world what it is you would really like to say, if you could say it and you knew they were listening.
Oh, wow. 2 minutes. That's tough. I'm not a very succinct person, as you can
It
tell. I
means you can
kind of,
only say one thing, really.
I think it means to really look around, look beyond what you think someone is, look beyond the labels, take time to converse, take time to learn who your neighbor is. We've gotten away from knowing who's in the house next door, who's in the apartment below us. Don't wait until we're at that, the town is burning down and we're packing our cars and having to escape the World War III fire. Or don't assume that because someone has a sign supporting someone you don't agree with, don't take that, the two-party system. It's not, we can't put people in those boxes, just like
Yeah.
introverts and extroverts. We need to look around, look at nature, which is also by looking, I'm not just talking, atmospherically, but look at each other, look at who you have in your room with you, who's look beyond and get to know people, be open. A lot of it's being open. You got to take away the judgments and
Yeah.
shed your clothes, be willing to get naked.
I would love for you to read the Mosaic, because you could be a spokesperson for it without even knowing it.
Oh,
Um,
really?
it's really that whole story of how the people that he meets along the way appear to be one thing, but when he sits and listens to them, he realizes they're not at all what they appear to be. And it happens so often that he realizes he doesn't see anything in the world the way it is. He sees everything in the world the way he thinks it is. And when he gets himself out of the way, he starts to see a world as the way it is, which is completely different than what he thought it was.
Yeah.
Um, I can't believe our time has already come.
I know, I can't either. Here I was stressing, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to talk about for an hour?
Yeah, we didn't even get to half the questions I wanted to ask you. So I want to thank you so much for showing up. And I want to thank you for showing up in the way you showed up also, which is really honest and really real. I want to invite people to really listen to what April said here and really see what resonates with you, and see, are you stuck in some position or something because you're only seeing things the way they appear to be rather than the way they actually are? And do you have the courage to just support other people? Do you have the courage to look at the person holding the sign of a name of somebody you don't want to be our president, and not put them in a box of someone you hate
Right,
or don't want to talk to, because that's just one thing they believe. There's
right.
so many things they believe that you probably are the same as. And I want to encourage all of you that are listening. I want to thank you for listening, first of all. And I want to encourage you, like I do every show, to invite a stranger into your life, to take a few moments with someone that you don't know. Feel safe about it. Trust your gut, trust your instincts, know what you're doing. But go up to someone you don't know and ask them how they're doing, and just sit with them and listen. No
Right.
need to fix them, change them, help them, do anything. Just be there for them and listen. And I believe that when people are strangers, we live in a strange world. But when people are friends, we live in a friendly world. And it
Exactly.
feels like this world could use having a friendlier world, that we could be a part of. So, April, is there one last thing you want to say before we go off?
I agree with everything you say, and I just wholeheartedly want to encourage people to definitely do that. We're look at the person next to you in the grocery store line and really ask, when you say how are you, or that cashier asks you how are you today, be willing to be open, to be honest and say something honest and be engaged. Put down the phone, focus, just those few moments of focusing and sharing a smile. And I know with the mask we can't always do that,
Right.
but just let your eyes light up. I keep trying to tell my husband, we gotta learn some new eye signals, but to share that spark. I mean, it's amazing to me how sometimes just when I'm in the grocery checkout line and the cashier lights up and says, hey, I like your hat today, or whatever it is, how that makes you feel. So think
Yeah.
about in turn how you can share and make someone else feel good. Just seconds.
I love that. I want to thank you again for showing up here.
Well,
I want to
thank you,
thank you.
Daniel. Thank you.
It's my honor, and I want to thank people for listening. Um, until the next time we get together, and April, I hope this won't be the end. I hope it's the beginning. But until the next
Yeah.
time we get together with the strangers that are in this room, don't be strangers. Take time to be friends with each other. Take time to get to know each other and love each other. Be kind and generous. See behind what you actually see with your eyes to see the person that's actually there. It's such a gift to see another human being, not for what they look like or for how much money they have, but for who they are.
Right.
Take a few minutes and try and see if you can see that person wherever you are. Until next time, stay safe, stay friendly, stay kind, and be friends with each other. Thank you again for being here. Ciao.